This best practice briefing is for any transformation leaders in larger organizations who either have Signavio and want to get more from it, or they're curious about building out a process or transformation practice, maybe enabled by Signavio or similar software. And they're looking at how you can build that journey and do that successfully.
Many organizations have SAP Signavio, and 73% of organizations have a process team. Only 8% of them feel like they're getting the effective value out of it that it deserves and that return on investment that they want. APQC did a survey to try to understand why this is happening. The respondents said a lot of their challenges was mapping end-to-end processes and trying to do that in an effective way. Now, that is not the challenge that teams face, and that, if you get that right, that's not going to turn the dial. The real problem is that they're not aligned enough with strategic objectives of the organization overall. What we do want to see is results measured by their impact on sales or their impact on cost reduction. Those kind of bottom line impacts using SAP Signavio are how you can actually hang your hat and say you've been a success.
The first step on that journey is often where people already go a little bit wrong. Some people think it's about getting the content right. It's about getting all of your models in, going in and starting afresh and modeling every process in your business. It might be about getting all the data you can possibly get and getting it QA'd to the nth degree. Or it might be getting all the old stuff you had in your old modeling tool, in your SharePoint, in Word documents, in Visio, and bringing that in so you're not starting from a blank sheet of paper. Good content is important, but across all the successful process management practice setups we've seen, there's one overriding commonality, and that's that they start with a win. Early on in the program, you need credibility. You need to have people invest their time, their effort, their attention. And the only way to do that is by being able to credibly make their lives better. So the best possible first step on your BPM journey is to get a win in the advocate area. Find a leader in the business, someone who has influence, someone who will influence the way people think, the way people work, and find someone who's got a problem, a challenge. It might be that costs are too high, revenue's too low, there's a massive new disruption coming, and they need to adapt their way of working. And then work with that business leader and their team to shape a new process, to analyze the data, to fix whatever it is that might be broken. And don't just do a nice little design. Don't just come up with some ideas that could solve a problem, but follow it all the way through. Not just from the analysis, but to a credible solution that's in place and the problem's gone. And then, once you've got that advocate win, once you have someone who knows that this is going to solve a problem, it's going to drive the business in the right direction, get them to shout about it. Get them to promote that to the rest of the business. The only way you're going to get that investment from people is if they trust you're going to make their lives better. So you take that advocate wing, you take that business leader, and you use them to promote the new capability you're developing across the rest of the organization and get the next area and the area after that and the area after that all lined up and roaring and ready to go. So an example of a good advocate win is with one of our clients, CIH, a fantastic company, a massive organization with 1,000,001 different branches. UK was Tarmac, in France was Equium, and in the German regions as Fels, and there's a whole host of others as well. And we're actually working in the French entity. Now, across their procure-to-pay area, they knew they were running a little bit heavy. There's a little bit of additional cost that didn't need to be there. They'd done some benchmarking exercises and found this opportunity to bring down the cost base there. So that's where we look to use Signavio to analyze the way they work, find some of those opportunities to get a win on the board. So we looked across procure-to-pay and found a pretty significant saving in the accounts payable space. And what we had at that point is a credible story about how Signavio and how a transformation capability could support the organization. How they knew there was a vague problem, but the detailed solution came through this transformation capability that they were establishing, that they could then use to communicate that to the rest of the organization, to say to people, look, it's not a generic tool that models processes and finds improvements. It's something that we've already used in this area of the business and delivered a real result.
Once you've got your win, it's super critical that you define a roadmap, which is just a plan for the projects that you're going to do over the next 1, 2 to 5 years, depending on whatever horizon makes sense to you. What it provides you with is a clear idea of what resources you need, what skills you need, and it gives clear signals to the business for what you're going to be doing when, and when they need to make stakeholders available and that kind of thing. So one of the first things that you should be looking at is what services are you going to provide? Now, these services could range from process improvement, perhaps optimizing your order to cash process so that it's more touchless and that there's more automation throughout. It could be helping the organization prepare for S/4HANA. The reality is that it needs to be driven from the problems that your organization is facing. They can't just be nice services that you want to offer because they sound sexy, they sound shiny, they sound new. They need to be driven from the problems the organization's facing and the strategic direction it's going in. Once you've got your services, you maximum want to be starting with maybe 3, perhaps audit, S/4HANA prep, and improvement. Once you've outlined those 3, that decides the technology that you want to invest in. So you may choose, if you're doing process improvement, you want some data analysis capability, so you choose to invest in something like process intelligence to help you along that way. What we don't want to be is tech-led. So you've gone then from problem to service to technology to support it, rather than saying, this new module of Signavio looks amazing, let's try it out and see how it will work. That can lead to tech debt, shelfware, and not delivering the results or the return on investment that you'd deserve. Once you've aligned your change makers and done all the setup pieces, there's now no excuse not to deliver. So you execute on that planned roadmap and do the projects that you've planned to do and deliver the value and the return to the business. At this point, you focus on the capabilities that you have and you don't invest in more technology until you want to expand into new services. An example of the kind of project that you can deliver that delivers meaningful results is the project we did with the Lego Group, where we helped their process team support the S/4HANA program, which is one of the biggest changes that they'd gone through in the last 15 years in terms of internal operations. We helped the process team effectively support reducing the risk of the S/4HANA move and ensuring that the new way of working was actually better than before. We did this by documenting the as-is processes and using process mining to uncover those hidden T codes and the customizations that could actually be removed to reduce technical debt in the long run. As part of this program, it cemented the BPM team in SAP Signavio, strategically critical for the Lego Group moving forwards, and reduced the overall S/4HANA program costs by nearly £3.1 million.
When it comes to setting up your BPM team, your new capability, your new function, there's 4 things you've got to get right if you want to have it be on the right grounding, a good foundation that you can build on. First and foremost, you've got to be really clear on the value. So Sam's just spoken through being really intentional with the services you choose, the problems you're going to solve for the business. So you need to be really clear on those, how that's going to be valuable for the business, how you tie it to the bottom line. And then, like with your advocate win, being able to shout about that and prove the results. Value is really critical here. Modeling for modeling's sake is useless. Setting up a team for a team's sake is useless. It has to be very intentional, has to affect the bottom line. The next piece is the actual content that you have. Look, if you're going to be promoting that people go and access your content, go into the process mining dashboards, look at the data, use it to drive decisions and improvement in their area, you need to have the right content there. You need to have dashboards you can trust, figures that are real, the process information that people need to be able to do their jobs. If it rolls around and it's a day of the audit and you pull your process documentation report, and then you've got this massive black hole around one of the functions, logistics has nothing in it, then you're not going to tick your audit box. You're not going to serve that use case, solve that problem. So you need to make sure that the content is there that enables you to deliver the services, deliver on your promise to the business of the problems that you're going to solve. The governance element is a really challenging piece. So when people talk process governance, often what they think is, I've got a new process model, who's going to sign it off before I can publish it? I've got a new dashboard, who do I give access to this to? That is a small part of the puzzle, making sure that the right people see the right things, it goes to the right audience. But there's a much bigger, broader, more challenging question around governance. And that is being really clear on who it is that does what with process and the broader changes that you're trying to inflict. So yeah, you might have a process owner who signs off on a model, but that is not the entire role of the process owner. It shouldn't be about process modeling, shouldn't be about signing off a dashboard, it shouldn't be about this granular piece. Process ownership is about having someone in the business who's taking accountability for an area of the business, a process, and then they're going to be held to account for that area getting better. If there's changes, it's going to be them who are going to be responsible for making those changes happen, or at least accountable for it. They're the ones who need to make sure that the process is trending in the right direction. They're the ones who, yes, they need to sign off on models, but they need to be held to account for an actual effective process. On the more internal side of things, you've got in the business process ownership, that's how you promote the business getting engaged. But on the BPM, on the transformation team side of things, there's a lot of different hats and roles that people need to wear to make it effective. You do need someone who's going to sit on top of the content, make sure that's neat, tidy, maintained. You're going to need someone who's going to be promoting the value, promoting the culture, and promoting the whole practice around it, a community manager. And you also need a sponsor, someone who's going to bat for the transformation capability at the highest level. Ideally, the more senior, the better. And if there are multiple change makers, if there are other teams like data intelligence, enterprise architecture, and a whole host of others, you also need to make sure that at the governance angle, there's alignment between those. You're working together in integrated teams. You're not all trying to draw on the same people and pulling in different directions. And then if you've got a clear view of the value, the problems you're solving, and proof that you can do that, if you've got the content that's enabling you to deliver on those promises, if you've got the governance, meaning the people being corralled in the right direction, then the final element is a culture. A good process culture is people being aware, not of the fact that you have a process modeling tool. That doesn't matter. If there's nothing valuable of it when going looking at a model, they don't need to look at it. But real process culture comes down to people feeling empowered to be able to drive positive change in their area of the business. If you're a process owner, it's not okay to have every single little change go through a head of function, to have every single attempt to move a business forward be stymied by bureaucracy and by crushing layers of hierarchy. Instead, good process culture is people feeling empowered to go forward and try to improve their areas of business that they're responsible for, their processes, and then being able to celebrate that, share learnings, and do that in a really collaborative environment where you've got process owners learning from other process owners and the whole business moving forward as a result. A real good example of this is working with MSC at the UK branch. We'd help them to establish this BPM practice. We'd help them to build out their team. They were new to the whole space, so we got a win on the board in order to cash. And then what we needed to do was make sure that they had this sustainable capability. So we did all the elements of promoting the value, shouted about the value we got from order to cash. We had a ton of amazing content from that improvement project that was normalized, so we could use it, revisit it, reuse it for training, for further improvement exercises. A really good body of content. We'd established process ownership as a concept, and we have really good engagement from the business in terms of being able to engage with process programs, really own it, drive change in their areas. And we start to generate that culture because we have the win, because we have the content, because we have the drive to really engage with it. And then the only real tricky element there was on the governance, the alignment of change makers. When it came to delivering some of the changes that we identified for the order to cash project, it needs to align the work that the PMO team were doing with the work that the BPM team were doing. There was a big delay, there was a big handoff, and it actually stalled out by a couple of months. So we brought them together, brought the PMO team closer to the BPM team, aligned what the actual project looked like from a handover from process to BPM, tried to get them to play really nicely together. And what we saw is that massively brought down that time to realize the change. So aligning those change makers, having good governance, not just around process, but around your whole change maker sphere of influence, is really critical to getting business value.
So we've been through the key milestones along your journey of SAP Signavio that you kind of need to hit in order to deliver value for your organization. If you'd like to have a strategic conversation with us about SAP Signavio or have any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch.